On behalf of the members of the Planning Board and our professionals, would like to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Sparta Township Planning Board. This meeting is now called to order. For the record, this meeting is being held on September 4th, 2024, at the Sparta Township Municipal Building located at 65 Main Street, Sparta, New Jersey. The time is now 7:03. The live stream for this meeting may be viewed at YouTube at www.youtube.com/@ Sparta Township, with Township being TWP. Please note that adequate public notice of the meeting was provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. So I ask that everyone please stand and join our board and our professionals as we proudly begin this meeting with a salute to our nation's flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everybody. And Ms. Fox, could you call the roll, please?
Justin Canellis.
Here.
Ernie Reichstad.
Here.
Christine Dunbar.
Here.
Mike Sylvester. Vice Chairman Bill Enright.
Here.
Chairman Ron Day.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Dean Blumetti.
Here.
Joan Furman.
Here.
Jeanette Burke. Here. Celeste Luciano.
Here.
And Brian Zimmerman.
Here. All right, thank you. As with every meeting, there's always a little change in the agenda, so what I'd like to do, if everyone's okay with it, is move the approval of Resolution 24-717, Lakeland Bank up front. Mr. Brady, our conflict attorney, has agreed to be here for this specific item, and I know he has another appointment tonight that he has to get to, so thank you for being here.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom has recused himself. Doing the proper optics of stepping down, you recused yourself, so perhaps you should step out. I think the resolution was circulated around everybody. Dave, can you use the mic, please? Thank you. I think the resolution was circulated around to everybody. If anybody has any questions about it, I'll be happy to answer them or make some small modifications. I don't remember who was here and voted. I think it was unanimous, but this is a product for people who voted yes on the approval to comment on. And if there's no changes or questions, then a motion to approve and a second and a vote on the resolution is in order.
Seeing as though I was chair at the time, I think I'll take point. Anyone have any questions, comments regarding Resolution 24-717? We have a motion for acceptance of 24-717 as written.
I'll move to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Deputy Mayor Dean Blumetti.
Yes.
Jeanette Burke.
Yes.
Joan Furman.
Yes.
Justin Canellis.
Yes.
Celeste Luciano.
Yes.
Ernie Reichstad.
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow afternoon.
All right, that was quick, that was great, thank you. So you may have noticed that we changed the order on the agenda slightly. I think we've been doing a better job of trying to wrap up by 10 o'clock, but we're not quite there. So one of the things you'll see on the revised agenda is that we've moved the hearings up front to try to allow the applicants and everyone to hear that first. And we'll have those hearings until 9:30, and then we'll hold all the other business between 9:30 and 10, hopefully to get us out here by 10. So hopefully that helps everybody, so fingers crossed, and let's hope it works. All right, so for tonight, for a public hearing, we have 3 applications. The first is 24-719 Willow Tree Therapy Services LLC. The second will be application 24-720 Admiral Metals. And the third is application 24-721 Brandstone of New Jersey. So will the folks from Willow Tree Services please come forward? And I'm going to ask that everyone speaking, please talk into the microphone so the discussion can be heard by everyone, either in attendance here tonight or anyone that's listening to the live stream at home.
It's all good. Thank you for the consideration.
All right, sorry about that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Daniel Benkendorf from Askin and Hooker, representing the applicants Willow Tree Therapy Services, LLC. Here this evening is Edward Blevins. Edward, if you please rise.
Edward, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you. And please state your name and address. Business address is sufficient.
Edward Blevins, 25 Main Street, Sparta, New Jersey, 07871.
Thank you.
Okay, and also here on behalf of Willow Tree is Gia. Gia?
Hi.
Hi, Gia. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
And please state your name, spell your last name, and give us an address.
Gia Leo. And the address is 25 Main Street, rear entrance, Sparta, New Jersey, 07871.
And also here on behalf of the applicant is our architect, Matthew Samantha. Matt?
Matthew, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
And Matthew, please state your name, spell your last name, and give us an address.
Sure. Matthew Smetana, Smetana, 64 Sunset Lake Road, Sparta, New Jersey.
Thank you. And the board recognizes and accepts the qualifications of Matthew Smetana as a registered architect. Please go ahead, everybody.
Thank you very much, Tom. All right, so the property we're here to discuss this evening is 50 Wilson Drive, Block 12008, Lot 14. It's a fully developed lot. It's 1.86 acres in the ED zone. This is a very unique application because the use that currently existed at the property is nearly identical to the use that we're now proposing to be used at the site. So originally, it was a children's occupational therapy facility. We're here this evening because applicant is seeking to do an amended site plan application for a change in the actual tenancy, but ultimately, it's for general mental health and wellness therapy center. So that's what we'll be doing in opposition to what we were doing. So to start us off, the business operates Monday and Saturday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. It operates on Sunday from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. The lights are on at dusk and they're off at 10 p.m. The sign is lit from the ground up and nothing is changing with respect to the sign. There are 15 employees that work at the facility, but they are not all there at the same time. I'm going to break it down so that you have on the busiest day, exactly how many employees are there throughout the day. So between the hours of 9 a.m. and 2 p.m., there are 2 business employees. Between the hours of 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., there are 2 clinicians. Okay? Between the hours of 3 p.m. and 7 p.m., there are 5 clinicians, no business employees. Between the hours of 7 p.m. and 9 p.m., it goes back down to 3 clinicians. Now, when there are 5 clinicians in the office, 20% of those clinicians, essentially 1 to 2 of the clinicians, will only have virtual sessions with their patients. Okay? So at most, we're looking at a need for approximately 5 spaces just for the employees throughout the day. No more than that. There are 20 parking spots total, and it's very rare that there will be 2 vehicles per client. But ultimately, we have 20 parking spots. The applicant has made a promise that if there are any issues with parking, that they will address them and come back to the board if they have to seek any additional approvals or changes or anything. As it stands right now, they're not making any changes to the landscape, to the sign, to any of the equipment that's outside the facility, or to the impervious coverage. All right. Now, Mr. Blevins, you've heard my summarization of both the application and the business practices. Is that an accurate representation, and would you consider that to be your testimony this evening?
Yes, it's accurate, and yes, I would.
Okay, thank you. So without further ado, if there's no questions for the applicant at this time, I'll go right into the architect to provide information regarding the changes to the inside of the building. Okay?
That's fine.
So we're going to start with a quick update to the drawings because since when we originally submitted, we've scaled back a couple things because of budget. So the updated plans, I have 3 copies for the professionals as well as another 14 copies here that I can pass around.
Why don't we'll call it A1 because it probably is.
I was gonna say,
a new set of plans.
Call it A1. Matt, are these going to be the same plans up there? Yeah. Okay, all right. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to label those, and you can pass these out.
So are we seeing these revised plans for the first time right now?
This evening, yes.
Relatively minor.
And some of the changes came once we received requests by the engineer. So that's part of the reason that you're just getting them now. So we apologize. While Matt's doing that, I'll note that there was a request for a Knox box on the side of the building. It's a box that essentially houses a key to access the building for purposes of emergency personnel. And you'll notice that's in fact one of the changes on the plans. And Matt can go over that.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll briefly just explain what's changed from the original drawings. First, in the bathroom area, we had originally proposed having a staff bathroom. We've eliminated that to basically just keep the men's room and women's room exactly as they are. At the rear of the building, we had proposed expanding the break room to include this back area. I've kind of marked it on the drawing here, basically, but we've now eliminated that as well, so it's basically just open corridor to the exit door there. As Dan mentioned, we added the knock box on the front underneath the covered entryway. And in the break room as well, we also eliminated the range and hood that were proposed there and brought back the washer and dryer that were originally in the building or in the existing building currently right now. So that summarizes the plan changes. Now I can kind of go through what we've done in the building to basically make it more suitable for Willow Tree and how they operate. Basically, I did include in this package a original footprint as well. So on the second page, there is a layout basically showing the existing conditions as they are currently. So since the type of therapy that they do requires basically more of a private setting, we've basically taken open office areas that were, much larger spaces and broken them down into more personal office spaces. So at the back here, to the left of the break room, we broke that down into 2 smaller offices there. In the center of the building, 1 larger office was broken down into 2 separate offices as well. And then along the left corner of the building, where it used to be a open gym, it's broken down into 3 smaller offices as well as a staff type room basically for or a group room basically for small group sessions or for the office staff meetings, things like that to occur in that space. And we did add 1 additional office in the front near the entranceway that took away more or less from open lobby space. The way their operation works, they don't need a receptionist, so basically we just have seating along that entry space for clients, and basically the clinician who is going to be seeing the client would basically just come out and bring them to the appropriate office. Other than that, on the exteriors, everything's basically staying the same except for the addition of several openings so that all the offices on the exterior of the building have ample windows, so it's a more pleasing environment basically. And I think that, with the exception of removing some closets basically in the group room, we've elongated the group room to basically include a little bit more of what was closet space before.
The mic first. And you're probably asking yourselves, why are there so many offices, right? If there's only going to be so many, people there at one time. 4 of the offices specifically are going to be for play therapy. So they're going to be specifically designed for that type of therapy. So they're not going to necessarily be offices. They're going to be designed for that use. Matt, there's also been some condensers for ductless mini slit systems. Can you explain where those are going to be placed?
So at the left end of the building is where the current condensers exist right now. They're going to be revamping the mechanical system basically to better accommodate this, the breaking down of all the different offices. But
And Matt, this is primarily a technical facility. So essentially, when someone comes there in their vehicle, they let the clinician know that they're ready to be seen, and then the clinician responds to them by phone, and then they come in. That's why we really don't need a reception area. Is that correct?
that's correct. Yeah.
So if there are any questions for our architect, that's the majority of his testimony. Now would be a good time.
Mr. Simmons, how about we start with you?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. For the record, referring to the report I prepared dated July 2nd, 2024, the applicant did address several of the items because there isn't that much going on as far as the site work itself is concerned. But just highlighting a couple additional items, if I may, I want to make sure I understand this. On the lighting, that the hours of operation are basically going to be the same as the previous tenant?
That's correct.
Okay. And with regards to...
I did also state that in my client's testimony, they will be off at 10 p.m. every evening. and they will come on at dusk.
Okay. On the architectural plans, I know Mr. Spantana just mentioned, I believe the HVAC units, the existing ones are on the left-hand side of the building. Are there going to be, I'm not quite clear, are there going to be additional units because of the breakup of the rooms?
I don't believe so. I mean, we haven't fully assessed the system to say with 100% accuracy, but it's basically same square footage. The newer units are usually more efficient, so it should basically be able to.
So if there were more units, they'd be on the left side of the building?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And as far as any sprinkler system, there's no sprinkling in the building right now, is there?
No, there's not. And based on the change of use section of the UCC code, there's no requirement to, if you're not changing the use group, there's no requirement to upgrade to having sprinkler systems. So it won't be
Okay. And the last thing I had from an environmental impact statement viewpoint, this is in the wellhead protection area. My assumption is, but if you could confirm, there's not going to be any floor drains or discharge of any hazardous waste.
correct, yes, nothing.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, my usual comments as far as an as-built be prepared, just so there's a record of what the board may consider approving and also what's constructed, and also the various improvements of the health department, the fire department, which with the knock box, I believe has already been taken care of, and with the construction official reviewing Mr. Spantana's plans, just to make sure everything's in conformance. And that's all I have on this application.
Thank you.
I'd also like to note, if the board does look kindly upon this application this evening, we would like to request that a waiver of a reading of the resolution be granted as well. And the purpose for that is because we're hoping to close tomorrow if we do get the approval, and we'd like to be able to begin working on it right away if we can. So that's something that we would be requesting as well as part of the application. Thank you.
Mr. Ahmad?
Thank you. I only have a handful of questions. I think Mr. Simmons touched on most of them. I do agree that the as-built will be helpful, especially in addressing some of the comments in my memo as far as the zoning standards. Again, it's a tenant change. They're not changing anything exterior at the site, but just to have it kind of formalized onto some sort of as-built with the zoning table, I think that would be really helpful moving forward. My only question to Mr. Spatana is, did you look at the landscaping at all? I know a question I'd raised in my memo was essentially, what exists around the site. We were really looking at the interior, but I only had a chance to drive by and look at aerials. Some of the trees weren't very mature in the front. I think that they probably meet a lot of the standards, but the ordinance had been changed in the last year and a half, which did require some additional landscaping measures. And I don't necessarily know if it's something that the board has to look at tonight. It wasn't prepared as a landscape exhibit or anything like that. But if they would be, amenable to, as part of resolution compliance, as part of that as-built, looking at some of the additional landscaping requirements under the ED zone, I'm sure Mr. Simmons and I could look at those.
Any objection to that?
None whatsoever. We'd be happy to do any landscaping that was required.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Brian?
I'm all set.
Okay. Celeste?
I'm good for the moment, thank you. I'm good. A quick question. You mentioned you would need about 5 parking spaces, and that was mostly for the business employees and clinicians. What about clients? About how many do you expect to be coming?
It's approximately maybe 4 to 5 in addition to the clinicians.
So it's a one-to-one.
It's actually less than 1-to-1. Yeah, because some of those clinicians are actually going to be doing it virtually. So at most, you got 5 clinicians there, so maybe 4 extra parking spots, so maybe 9 total, and we have 20. So we didn't find it a need for concern. But again, the client is open, if there is a problem, to come back to the board and, seek a form of approval if necessary. And the dumpster enclosure is completed, and it is fenced in and shielded, so we didn't have any problems with that either.
All right, thank you. And just out of curiosity, what do you use a washer and dryer for?
It was an occupational therapy need to wash the hammocks that they use, the bedding, and
So you're just retaining it? It's not...
yeah, we're going to
Okay.
retain. So
Not
not
for
make any further improvements we don't want to make, right?
Thank you. That's all.
Hi, thanks for your testimony so far. A couple quick questions. The lighting and the timing of the lighting, are there any, you mentioned dusk to 10 p.m. Which lights are those, and are there any lights that are excluded from that Any lighting excluded from that?
if you'd like. Yeah, I spoke with the current owner today to confirm. I didn't want to make assumptions. All of the parking lot lights and the lighting for the sign are on a timer, so that can be adjusted seasonally as we go for the dusk to 10 p.m. The building lights are manually turned off upon exiting, and nobody's working past 10 p.m., so they'll be turned off as well.
Okay, okay. So there's no additional building lights or security lights or anything? Okay. The sign, so the design, love the design. You said the size, just if you can confirm, the size is staying the same, the lighting mechanism on the sign is staying the same. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And there's no additional signs being added. The setback from Wilson Drive is still, I mean, the previous variance was like a little over 5 feet. And that's still where the sign is going to be. Okay, because the required is, I think, 25 feet, but, okay, but it's staying where it is?
Yep.
At your
No
plans?
no changes at all.
Okay. And you mentioned the condensers and the new condensers, or the replacement condensers. How will those be screened from the road and neighboring, will they be screened from site?
Yeah. No, they will not be screened.
Okay. I'll ask our professionals maybe, is that something that we typically ask for or require?
I'd suggest, once Mr. and Ms. Smetana has the number of units and the locations designated, that we look at the landscaping plan in conjunction with that to see, adhering to any offset requirements that the manufacturer recommends, then maybe some landscaping be added to buffer that area.
And we can talk about it with respect to the landscape plan.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for spending time with us tonight. Can you just confirm that it's children's only outpatient?
It is not children's only. It's,
We see clients from ages 4 through adulthood.
The clients that are non-driving age, where do their drivers stay?
Honestly, most of those parents are probably going to go across the street to Starbucks and Jersey Mike's. Most of them are drop-off now. We have 3 locations, other locations. Parents drop off typically and leave. If not, they can wait in the waiting room if they'd like to.
Okay, but they don't have to stay in the parking lot and idle their cars?
We would discourage that.
How long are typical sessions?
53 to 60 minutes.
And are any drugs administered or stored on site?
No.
Christine?
I have no questions.
Ernie?
Thank you.
No questions.
I'm good.
And I have no questions either, so let me open it up to the public for any questions or comments that anyone from the public may have. Okay, so seeing nobody, I guess we could bring it back. And so, Tom, are there any conditions or any
Yes, I think
recommendations you
there's a few.
have for how we
And,
craft the resolution?
So we'll try to craft a motion, and the board could consider it and add to it if it wants to. It's a motion
Talking to the
to,
microphone, I'm sorry.
sure, it's a motion to approve the amended preliminary and final site plan as described this evening, subject to the conditions of Dave and Catherine's reports. It's subject to the requirement that it is effective tonight, with, provided the applicant may proceed effective immediately, provided all other compliance requirements are met. They will prepare an additional landscaping plan for some additional landscaping to be reviewed and approved by the town board planner and the board engineer. And that shall include landscaping of the HVAC condenser area. Any dispute about the landscaping shall be returned to the board for final determination. The lights will be, the parking lot lights will be from dusk to 10 p.m. And the building mounted lights will be turned off at the close of business. And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman, but board members may have something.
Anybody else have any that you like to recommend, or?
Yeah, I would just clarify the lighting clause includes the signage too, not just the parking
Okay, the
lot.
lighting includes the signage as well.
Mr. Collins, could you just, the waiver of, was it reading the resolution? I never heard that.
Actually, what it means is the applicant is waiving their right to receive a written resolution before they proceed. The board, and you have historically approved, in situations that are simple like this, you've historically allowed people to proceed effective immediately, but they're at their own risk and they're subject to complying with all the requirements of their approval. And they're familiar with that, so.
Do you have a recommendation on that?
I think it makes a lot of sense in this particular case, since there really is no change to the site.
Okay, so based on that, would anybody like to make a motion to accept it?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second? Okay, roll call?
Deputy Mayor Dean Blumetti?
Yes.
Jeanette Burke?
Yes.
Christine Dunbar?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Bill Enright?
Yes.
Joan Furman?
Yes.
Justin Canellis?
Yes.
Celeste Luciano?
Yes.
Ernie Ragsdad?
Yes.
And Chairman Ronday.
Yes. All right, the motion is passed. Thank you. And we wish
Thank you very
a
much,
lot of
ladies
luck
and gentlemen.
Success.
I have another application, so you get to see me again tonight.
Thank you. All right, so the second application we'll be hearing tonight is Planning Board Application 24-720, Admiral Metals. Please come forward, welcome. And if you could, just give us a minute to reset some of our paperwork up here.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, professionals and staff. My name's Robert McBriar. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Skink, Price, Smith & King. We represent the applicant owner, 6 Aaron Way, LLC, in tonight's application. This application involves property identified as Block 16003, Lot 3, also known as 6 Aaron Way, in the township. The property is located in the township's economic development zone. By way of brief introduction, the applicant seeks minor site plan approval for a change in tenancy in the existing building and site. The site is fully developed, and the applicant proposes no site plan changes or site grading to alter existing topographic conditions. In fact, no exterior changes are proposed except for an exterior facade sign. The new tenant, Admiral Metals, will occupy approximately 12,920 square feet of the existing 27,000 square foot building. The new tenant will utilize space for warehousing metal stock, which includes aluminum, brass, bronze, and copper. Here with me this evening are Jason Dunn, professional planner and licensed landscape architect at Dykstra Associates, as well as Alex Berardi, authorized representative of the owner applicant 6 Aaron Way LLC. At this time, Mr. Collins, I'd ask that Mr. Dunn and Alex Berardi be sworn in.
Yes, gentlemen who will be testifying for the applicant, please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm, you can both stand, yes. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
Yes, I do. I do.
Thank you, and please state your names, spell your last name, and give us an address.
Jason Dunn, D-U-N-N, 11 Lawrence Road, Newton, New Jersey.
Alex Berardi, 1 Main Street, Suite 9, Sparta, New Jersey, B-E-R-A-R-D-I.
Thank you, gentlemen. And the board recognizes and accepts the qualifications of Jason Dunn as a professional planner. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Mr. Dunn, you're familiar with this subject site, correct? You know what? Yeah.
Does this pick up?
Good. Yeah.
Yes, I am. 6 Aaron Way, Lot 3, Block 16003. Our firm did the original site plan for this site. Before this site plan, there was a subdivision on this commercial development that allowed certain impervious cover variances. That was all approved in the first round. And then there was an amended site plan that we also helped with that was a change in tenant to include a glass floor manufacturer. So yes, I am familiar with the site. In fact, I was at the meeting providing testimony back in 2022, I think it was, 2020.
And Mr. Dunn, are the existing conditions changing as a result of the proposed new tenancy?
There's no site changes as a result of this new tenant. All the parking is staying in place. There's going to be no added impervious, no grading or drainage required, and no changes to the parking, except overnight. There will be some parking for delivery trucks.
And no new variances are required for this application, correct?
That's correct. The application is essentially just a change in tenant. It's not changing any part of the building at all.
And you've had an opportunity to review Mr. Simmons's engineering report dated August 5th, 2024, correct?
Yes, I did. There were some minor questions or clarifications. I can just kind of go over that the applicant has done the due diligence of making sure the septic is appropriate for the new tenant and the existing tenant, which it certainly is. It's designed for 2,000 gallons per day. And the new flow or proposed flow would be just under 500 gallons per day. We're going to hear from Alex shortly, who will explain the number of employees and parking requirements. But there are 97 parking spaces on this site, and the current tenant uses, I think, only about 20. Is that right? Very few. So there's a lot of empty space out there, which was good. There will be no outdoor storage with this tenant, so there won't be any requirements, in my opinion, for additional landscaping. As part of the previous approval, of course, there was landscaping required. Our office oversaw the resolution compliance. Alex personally, I think, planted trees. I don't know, but they're out there and they're in good shape. That part of the site plan, final site plan, has passed. Lighting is not proposed to change. There is one sign, a facade sign being proposed that will meet the ordinance standards. I think the maximum height is 2 feet. The maximum length is 12 feet. It won't be any larger than that. It won't be illuminated. And there is no freestanding sign there, no monument sign, and there is not going to be proposed one either. So it's a pretty de minimis site plan in my opinion. There's no need for more trash storage or anything like that either.
Mr. Dunn, are you aware if the building is sprinklered?
Yes, I was told that it is sprinklered.
At this time, if there are any questions from Mr. Dunn, we will proceed with testimony about the actual business operations, some of the particulars in that regard from Mr. Berardi. But while Jason has the mic, if there are any questions about the site, now would be the opportunity to explore that.
Okay, anybody have an objection, or just go ahead, keep going? Yeah, let's keep going.
Great, thank you. Mr. Berardi, can you describe your relationship with the owner, applicant 6 Aaron Way LLC?
I am the owner and I oversee it operationally, as well as all the other real estate that we own in that area. So I'm very familiar with the building itself and the operations and the tenants of it.
And you're familiar with the current floor plan, is that correct?
Correct.
Can you provide a brief description of the floor plan to the board members?
Yeah, so the proposed or the existing floor plan, which the new tenant is proposing to occupy, is approximately 12,920 square feet. About 380 square feet of it, 338 square feet of it could be called office. It's a very small office with 2 bathrooms. The rest of it is warehouse and storage.
And can you describe the status of existing tenancies or vacancies?
The current building is 100% occupied. The tenant is looking to vacate because of a change in their business model. They are still currently operational, and they plan to vacate as soon as a new tenant can be found, or a new tenant was found, as soon as potentially this is approved. The current tenant in the space is almost an identical use to the proposed, and it is a food repackaging facility that distributes their product, throughout.
Does the floor plan need to be changed to accommodate the new tenancy?
There are no physical changes proposed to either the internal floor plan or the external floor plan of the building, with the exception of a non-illuminated sign on the facade.
And can you briefly describe the nature of the proposed use?
Admiral Metals is, they provide wholesale storage of, I would call it somewhat specialty metal products, aluminum, brass, copper, stainless steel. They have various different shapes and sizes of that product, round, hexagon, squares, so you could call it metal stock. This is not an iron shop. There is no fabrication proposed. They simply receive, an occasional shipment, which then they distribute to their clients. This is not a retail operation. You cannot go into this facility and buy things personally. Some of their large clients in the area are Thor Labs and Picatinny Arsenal and GE. So it's a sort of a direct to producer, I guess you could call it, sales model where, we can't go in there and buy things. So.
Are you aware of the number of employees that will be on site?
Yeah, so they're going to start with 4 employees and eventually hope to add 2 more to 6 employees. The majority of those employees are going to be delivery drivers. So I believe 3 of the 4 initial employees are going to be delivery drivers, and 1 is going to be a warehouse manager.
And can you briefly describe the types or sizes of vehicles expected to be received by way of deliveries or distribution by the new tenancy?
Yep. So in addition to the 3 to 4 or the 4 employees that they're initially going to have, they're going to have 3 flatbed delivery trucks, which are going to be loaded in the morning, do their deliveries throughout the entire day, and then come back and either reload at night for the next day's delivery or park and get reloaded in the morning. They are not trucks. These trucks leave once at the beginning of the day and come back once at the end. In addition to that, they receive 3 to 5 tractor trailer loads per week. So either 1 every other day, or maybe if it's a busy week, 1 every day. And again, this is a single tractor trailer load per day. It is not multiples. And they come in, they unload, they store everything inside, and then they, load up their trucks and get them ready to get them to their clients.
Based on your observations and experience at the site, do you believe that the parking will be adequate for the 2 existing tenants?
More than adequate. There's 97 total spaces. The existing tenant has 50, there's 2 tenants in the building. One of them is approximately 14,000 square feet, 14,080 square feet. This one is 12,920. The existing tenant on the other side, they have about 15 employees. They probably have a total of less than 20 cars there at any given time, 1 or 2 work trucks that stay on site, and then 15 employees. With the proposed use, you'd have 4 to 6 employees, 3 delivery trucks, and there's 97 spaces, so there's a plethora of parking.
Will any hazardous materials be stored on the premises?
There is no fabrication, there are no storage or use of anything that can be even vaguely considered hazardous. There is no cutting, there is no, again, no fabrication. This is merely metal stock that has come in, most of it's specialty order for their clients, and then it is given, it is stored and distributed to them when the time permits.
Can you comment on the proposed hours of operation?
Yeah, so they start at 5 and they're usually back, 5 a.m. and they're usually back by 3 o'clock.
I think that hit all the points that were inquired in your board professional reports. If there are any questions from board members as to the business operations, Mr. Berardi can certainly speak to that.
Okay, will there be any other testimony tonight? Or is that everything?
That's it.
Yep, that's it.
Great. All right, so Mr. Mard, why don't we start with you?
Sure, thank you. As far as thank you for your testimony, thank you for your help in some of that information. As far as the flatbed delivery trucks that you discussed, most of the parking on the site appears to be just traditional passenger vehicle size parking. Where are those, they're parked overnight when they're not being utilized?
Yep.
So where are those generally going to be?
Directly behind the tenant's occupied space. So if you're looking at the site plan, I guess that would be the southwesterly corner
Okay.
of the parking lot.
So they'll take up probably more than one normal space, or they'll be
Yeah, I mean,
nose
they'd
out?
be sticking out a little bit, but.
Okay. But that'll just be for after hours
Yeah,
generally?
yeah.
Okay. As far as the use, you'd mentioned that the tenant basically gets material, stores it, and they're not getting orders from online that they're fulfilling, right? They are they're distributing direct sales to a large manufacturer or something like that.
Just like Thorlabs. So Thorlabs, everyone knows who Thorlabs is around here. They use their products for, Thorlabs makes lasers or something, so they use their, again, specialty metals. This is not, you're not buying their stuff on Amazon. This is not a high velocity, distribution center by any stretch of the imagination. 3 to 5 tractor trailers in per week, 3 trucks out per day.
So they're just a wholesaler.
Yeah,
They're not a retailer. They're a wholesaler. They're not a distribution center for any other online entities. They're not storing materials to be put out, by any online orders. They're specialty orders with direct customers that buy from a wholesaler.
Correct.
Thank you. And I only bring that up as a matter of the use in the zone. Specifically, distribution centers are not permitted. I don't think by any stretch that this is probably would ever be considered a distribution center based on the scale of it. A distribution center, just for clarity, is something that's 50 to 100 times bigger than this at a minimum, and would be utilizing basically stock of inventory from many, many, many retailers and then distributing it out because it's a closer location than those retailers are. So rather than them store their inventory in a lot of different places, they keep it in one place like a distribution center and then it goes out. Whereas this is a wholesale distributor, mostly distinguishing the fact that it's not a retail distributor. It's not someone, they're not going to have walk-in customers. They're not going to be selling something like a normal retail store. So I just wanted to distinguish that, put that on the record, and just I appreciate the testimony to clear that up. As far as the other questions I had, similar question to the last application because it is in the same zone. The zone was changed about 18 months ago, 2 years ago almost, and has certain requirements for landscaping, and I just want to make sure that they're captured. I think Mr. Simmons may require some sort of as-built or something like that if anything's changed. I think that would be helpful to, one, clarify any of that zoning table information that was more just like a housekeeping thing to make sure that the zoning's all good with the ED zone, especially because it has changed, and some of the requirements that weren't there on that bulk table, as well as the landscaping, which I think can be handled again as part of resolution compliance. The site was only recently approved and built, so.
So we will happily submit or resubmit, the as-built is going to be essentially it is going to be what was submitted with the application, as there's been no changes to it whatsoever. The landscaping was approved and installed. This building went into service in 2022, I want to say, late 21, early 22. I would prefer not to do additional landscaping to the site unless there is some legal impetus to do so. Again, there's no changes to the outside.
Agreed. I think one of the major things that will come up is basically just conformance with the landscape area ratio. I believe that the site is probably in compliance with that based on the impervious coverage. But again, it's just kind of showing those things up in part of the as-built, having that zoning table show those requirements, and making sure that they're all in good standing. That's all I had. Thank you.
Quick question. So you were discussing flatbeds. Are you considering a flatbed a 53-foot trailer?
No, I believe that they had multiple 26-foot would be the
26 foot?
longest one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just because I'm looking at it and that's
They're not
a
articulated.
tight turn
Yeah,
for a
no, they're
53
not,
foot.
and although this is all engineered for tractor trailer traffic.
They can handle that?
Yeah. They would not, their delivery trucks are not tractor trailers.
Okay. All right. That's all. The only question I had. Thank you.
I'm good for the moment, thank you.
I just have one quick question with regards to the trucks that are coming in. You said 3 max during the
Three
week?
to 5 per week, yeah.
3 to 5 per week.
Yep.
And What times do you anticipate them coming?
Within their business hours,
Between 9 and 5?
well, between 5 and 3, most
Oh.
likely, yeah.
Between their
Yeah, yeah.
business hours?
Yeah.
Okay. So 5 to 3. All right, thank you.
Right, if we could, I just want to run to Dave. Dave, if you could run through your questions, any concerns?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just again, referring to the report I prepared dated August 5th, 2024, the applicant basically addressed all the items. The only other item I have is on page 6, item C. I recommend that a do not enter sign be installed at the easterly end of the one-way driveway where it intersects the one-way driveway leading to Aaron Way.
Yeah, this was installed already, so I can enter that as a exhibit, or, go out to visit the site, you'll see it there.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
We'll take that as an Exhibit A1, and that way you've addressed it.
No, and I apologize. Going to
That's
bring it back
okay, I
to you.
don't have any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Blumetti.
Yeah, thank you for your testimony. A couple of questions. What is I might have missed this, what is the other current use, the one that's
The
staying?
other current use is light manufacturing. They, how do you describe what they do? They make very high-end glass floors, staircases, and railings. So they order specialty glass from Spain, and they assemble it on site. And they're pretty crazy what they do, but these high-end car dealerships, you'll see it'll be like a completely suspended glass floor with Ferraris and stuff like that parked on top. They're the people who make these structural glass floors. And they've been there and operational for about 2 years.
Okay, and you talked about the number of employees.
Yep, they have
Okay.
15.
How many trucks per day come in and out for that business?
Not many. So they have their own, again, they get even less tractor trailer deliveries than the proposed use. Frankly, I'd be making up a number, but I haven't even seen one there in a very long time. So if I'm going to guess, I would say 2, probably 2, 3 per week they get.
Okay. So you mentioned, talking about trucking still, you mentioned overnight truck parking being proposed for the new business, the new tenant. What is the quantity again that you expect?
They have 3 delivery trucks.
Okay. Will all trucks that will be there and registered, will all trucks that'll be parking there be registered to Admiral Metals?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so there'll be
And
no
they're
other,
all street legal. These are not site trucks or anything like that. These are road going vehicles.
okay, so no additional trucks will be parked there or registered to Admiral that aren't part of the business?
No.
Is that correct? Okay. The landscaping note, that is a high priority for me too. The planner's comments about being compliant with the 2022 zone requirements. So I would ask that when you submit, I guess, the landscape plan or something, just make sure that we are consistent with 2022. That'd be my preference as well. The signage, so I couldn't tell from the documents you distributed electronically earlier. Is there an existing sign that this is replacing?
There is not an existing sign. I think the photo that I had, I thought I don't have it with me. There is no existing sign where the proposed sign is going. It would be on the far right, call it parapet of the building, and it would be code compliant, 24 square feet or 2 by 12.
Okay. Do you have that? I haven't seen that. I'm not sure if others have.
Yeah,
But we haven't seen the design of that. So either we'll have to take a look at it tonight in terms of the color, font, et cetera, or we'll have to have you come back to the site plan waiver subcommittee.
Yeah, so this is the proposed sign. I'm pretty sure that was submitted with the application.
You can make that A2, and Robert, you could mark it as A2 and then pass it up at that end, and we can pass it along.
Yeah.
Yeah, the application that I have, it was Exhibit C. That was submitted on my behalf, but I don't know what you guys are looking at. And that's a picture of the facade of the building.
This is what we had for Exhibit C.
Yeah,
Oh,
Exhibit
just
C.
one building?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
just
then,
a
that is the proposed sign on there.
long distance view of the
Yeah,
building
yeah.
with the,
A lot of grass.
yeah, okay.
Looks like an old cowboy.
Okay, so we'll take a look at that this evening. Is that the plan?
Yeah, correct. I'd like to potentially, if the board sees favorable upon it, get their sign approved as well, so they don't have to come back.
This is the other exhibit, just keep them together. That's the.
Okay.
assignment.
The lighting plan, can you talk about that?
Not specifically. It was what was approved in 2022 or 21. There was no changes to it. There is parking lot lights, as per code. Jason might be able to make a couple comments about it. And then there are some wall grazers on the building for accent.
Okay, I've seen somewhere in the paperwork that currently all parking lot lights are on from dusk to dawn.
Correct. They operate on a photo eye, so when it gets dark out, they go on, and when it gets light out, they go off.
Okay, would you consider slimming that down?
It's always a balance between human safety and having dark. If there's people operating on the site, I do not want it dark. That's dangerous to people that are there. If there are some, if there's after hours, call it 10 at nighttime, dusk till 5 a.m., 4 a.m. when 5 a.m. when these people get here, that'd be fine. But I wouldn't make any other concessions on that.
So can you explain what you're proposing then?
Yeah, I mean,
wasn't following.
Is there a specific time that you want them off as much as possible at night, or?
Yeah, and I mean, at night, I would say just minimally necessary security lighting, but
Yeah.
the whole it's a huge, large parking lot, and if there's, if the hours end at 5 p.m. or 3 p.m., even give or take, maybe it's
Yeah.
7
So then
p.m.
8 to 5, would that be acceptable? 8 p.m. to 5 a.m.?
They have them off between 8 and 5?
Correct, because the operation starts at 5, and there might be some stragglers. The other people don't. They might work a little later. The other tenants. So
Yeah, that would be good. Off from 8 p.m. to 5
Yeah.
a.m.? Yeah, thank you.
fine.
Okay. The last point I want to make is maybe more of a discussion. So, as you're aware, the impervious coverage it was approved last time as it's an existing variance. It is significantly over the allowable, which is 40%, and currently it's almost 50%, 49.7. Additionally, the parking coverage, as you recall, I'm sure you know well, is over the maximum allowed, right? It was 25%, and last time 31% was granted. Given the scope of the operations, given the expected number of employees, expected number of trucks, hours of operation, are there ways to help reduce those or get more in line with the impervious coverage or the parking lot coverage
No.
overages?
No, these are all existing. I'm not going to be modifying the site plan, which I'll then have to come back and modify again if we get, different tenants that require more parking or less parking. Again, the intent here is there's nothing physical changing on the building. This is merely a change of tenant. I wouldn't even call it a different use. It's a pretty similar use. So it's like kind to me. And we're not going to be making any changes to the site, especially impervious or anything like that.
Okay.
They were previously approved, and the applicant is not doing anything to increase or change those as they've been previously approved.
So is this considered a change in use? Do we know that? Ask our professionals. Is this considered a change in use at all, or?
Change in tenancy.
Okay.
I think that we heard testimony that the use prior to this was similar in function, maybe not in the materials because the other one was a food business, but essentially it's the same function. I think it would be under the same category in the ED zone, warehousing and wholesaling.
Okay.
But I believe they're here tonight because of the provision in the ED zone that requires the change in tenant to come back before the board, which is what we're seeing in actually all three applications tonight.
Yeah.
Again, there are no changes proposed to the site, to the landscaping, the functionality, the topography. There are no changes to the existing conditions. As just explained, this is merely a change of tenancy, and that's why we're here.
Okay. I would like to see the landscaping addressed, though. That's my preference. If it's not in compliance with the 2022 updated regulations, I would like to see some effort made if we need more landscaping in terms of the ratio or in terms of, the amount of landscaping. Okay, that's all I have for now.
Can I ask some questions to Tom and to Dave? Is this going to be, first of all, is there any impetus for us to change this landscaping? And number two, is it the intent to have every new application be brought to current standards, even for minor site plans like this going forward? And I know that's partially a question that maybe you guys can answer, and also that the board can answer, but the attempt to, enforce more current standard on an existing site plan seems somewhat arbitrary.
It's not arbitrary. You're here because you need site plan approval for a new tenant, and that's what the ordinance says. So,
Use the microphone, please, Tom.
sure. It's not arbitrary because you're here for a new tenant, and that's, the ordinance requires all new tenants to come back to the board. And on the subject of landscaping, the request in the review reports, which is reasonable, is for you to have your as-built plan confirm that you comply with the ordinance.
Yeah, that's fine.
And you said you would. So that's, I don't know what the board's going to do on every application, but each application, it rests on its own merits. So each time an applicant comes, they have to address all issues of the review and all issues of the ordinance. I think each case rests on its own facts. And in this particular one, you made a good argument that you're not changing any of the exterior or the interior except the additional sign. So I don't, it's up to the board to decide what they're going to require as conditions, even on your application. So.
Okay, fair.
And I would just like to clarify, I don't think we're trying to impose anything that's undue. I think all that I'm asking for is the information, essentially to show compliance, because I think from eyeballing, I think you're very close, if not fully compliant. We just want to make sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
So it's just basically that the standards are being complied with. I don't think there's going to be an issue, and I think if anything, if there was any kind of hiccup along the way, that Dave and I are here to, handle anything, and we can work with you.
You mentioned you were going to turn off the lights at 8 o'clock in the parking lot. You don't expect the trucks to return after that time?
No, this tenant has done it by 3 o'clock. So they're in, they load up their trucks for the next day, probably within an hour or two. And then their drivers come in at approximately 5 a.m. And they leave for the day and they're gone for the rest of the day.
No questions.
Yes, thank you. I'm representing the interests of the Environmental Commission. And I don't think it's arbitrary when we're concerned about pavement that's not being used in an area that's up against a White Lake wildlife area.
Okay.
So I really appreciate the fact that you're not going to have the lights on, all night. That's great, because that harms the wildlife. But I do think going forward, when we ask these questions, the fact that this is a natural resource of wildlife and the Aaron Way itself is up against that in that area, okay, this in order to protect natural resources and our water, okay, which is underneath where your building is, we want to see this protected. And this is why we ask these questions.
Yeah, that's fair.
Is because, again, it doesn't seem like it, but we're all dependent on natural resources and keeping them clean. So, I just wanted to make that comment. And this area that you're occupying with your warehouse is very close to a sensitive area also. And on top of the aquifer area. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Just one question. The tractor trailer deliveries, when do they generally occur?
During their business hours, I don't have specific times that they would show up, but I would anytime during their business hours.
All right. 'Cause I specifically asked because, sometimes you have tractor trailer loads that come from a distance away. They could get there at 3 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, how are you gonna control not having them idle in your lot? If they come during the winter, you know what I mean? Are you gonna prohibit them from being there before 5 a.m.?
I could if that's if the board would find it more agreeable. You know, I can't be, I'm not responsible, or I don't know exactly when every truck is gonna show up. And I don't know when they would leave or anything like that, but I'd be happy to, you know, say it, have a no idling sign on the property if that's, you know, beneficial or anything like that.
I think a no idling between that 8 PM and 5 AM.
Yeah.
Or even parking on the property other than your own vehicles would be appropriate, just to keep them from doing
From
that.
idling, yeah.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
The only question that I have, and again, thank you for your testimony tonight, is relative to the sign. So the sign, I believe you're saying it's going to be 2 by 12.
Yeah, correct.
I'm having a hard time seeing how this goes on a 2 by 12. Is that really what 2 by 12 you're looking for with this design?
That's just their standard sign. I don't know the exact orientation. They might put the logo to the left of it and then Admiral Metals, but that's going to be the colors. Those are going to be definitely going to be the colors. If you guys aren't comfortable, you know, approving those colors with that logo and maybe some change in the orientation of the logo next to the lettering, then obviously we could come back for a sign, for a site plan waiver for a sign, or at least send it back as, you know, some resolution compliance item.
And that's kind of where I was going. It says, you know, I understand the colors and everything, but I just would like to see it in the final design configuration.
Yep.
The 2 by 12. And that
that's
could be
fine.
done by site plan, the minus site plan subcommittee, site
Yep.
plan waiver. So if you're agreeable to that, then that
Yeah, that's
works.
fine.
Okay. And the other, you mentioned the other tenants do not have signs.
They have a sign on their building.
They do?
Correct.
Okay. And
Or it's on the building and it's on the far left parapet.
okay. Okay. And that's the 2 by 12 too, or?
I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't place it there, and it was them.
Okay.
They did it.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there were just one comment I want to review privately with my client. If I could just indulge the board for 1 minute to speak with our client about one of the comments that came up.
Okay.
I truly appreciate that. Thank you.
And then we'll open up to the public for any questions and comments.
We should have
Oh, okay.
That happened with the steel also.
Over here. This one today. Right? We're gonna take this and move it here.
Oh, yeah.
Real dark here.
Oh, I did something, oh, no, that's,
Separate these two lines.
that's nice.
Sure, if that's okay with everybody?
Sure. Sounds good.
Thanks, that's a good idea.
the previous application, we will also waive or request waive reading of the resolution to expedite the new tenancy, should the application be approved tonight. We want an opportunity to consult to provide a little bit more clarification on a couple of the comments that were received. So I'll pass the mic down the line, and hopefully we can achieve that. Thank you.
I spoke with the operations manager, the tenant. They can schedule their tractor trailer deliveries, so they don't schedule anything for before or after hours. They receive their trucks during their business hours. They're unloaded on site, promptly, and then the trucks move off. So there's not going to be anyone arriving in the middle of the night and idling for a couple hours. So.
I just wanted to revisit the landscape ordinance in the 2022 ED zone ordinance 22-21. I'm looking at section 22, amended to add the following section J and the number 7, landscape area ratio, because I do agree that we should do a plan that shows how compliant the existing landscaping plan is to this ordinance. But I think what our findings are going to be, it doesn't suit every point of this. The landscape area ratio is 40% of undeveloped or non-pervious areas shall be planting areas or existing.
Grass cover exists is fine too.
Okay, so grass cover would count as.
It's not all plantings, like also grass coverage, basically anything that's not impervious, so not building and not pavement.
All right, so
will
we
count.
would be able to reach that, but the next one is about along the property boundaries, evergreen trees shall be planted at 15-foot intervals in a minimum of 2 offset rows, and I think it means staggered. Linear rows of evergreen trees shall be avoided. There are some evergreen trees behind the building. I think they're probably 20 feet apart, but it's a single row. And I just would ask the board to consider a waiver if that's what it would be, a design exception from the strict compliance with that, because that would really kind of go against the character of that neighborhood, if you will. I know that there's some pretty dense plantings between the back of the buildings on the other side of Aaron Way and the White Lake Park. But in this case, the property lines are bordered by just another commercial industrial building. So I don't see that as being necessary. I think everything else I think we can meet. I would just ask the board to consider that, and then we'll work with your professionals to upgrade where we need to.
Mr. Dunn, I believe there are plantings around the perimeter of the entire site, maybe not evergreens everywhere, but I think on your eastern boundary that there are some trees there.
Yes, I do remember, and looking at the aerial photo it's on page 2 of your report, Catherine, I do see there are some plantings on the eastern side and also behind the building. So we do have some plantings there, yes.
Yeah, and those were probably just planted maybe 2 years ago, so they're not even near full maturity. I only mention that because as far as the intent and purpose of the ordinance, it's not like the site is bare. They do have landscaping. As I mentioned earlier, I really just want to make sure that because the ordinance has been changed, that there was conformance with those zone regulations, including the new ones that were added. But I didn't mean to say that there was no landscaping on the site. You're going to have to do supplemental, serious amount of plantings. I think they meet the intent and purpose of the ordinance. I don't think what they're asking for as far as a waiver is a big ask. I think it's more of a protection in the case that if it came to reso compliance time, they didn't have to come back before the board to do something that they noted as a non-compliant issue. I think the waiver would just be so that they could see it as either a pre-existing nonconformity or as a waiver moving forward, because they do have a significant amount of plantings. And I do think we could rely upon that if you were to grant the waiver to say that they do have significant planting. I don't know the maturity level of it yet. I actually don't know the species either because we don't have a landscape plan and the aerial's not very good. in that whole section.
We'll provide a new plan that shows all that.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, just as far as the as-built to show that. But I think as far as the ordinance purposes, the site's not bare. It's not a bare industrial site. It's not, it has nice landscaping that just hasn't been mature yet. And I'm afraid that if we do impose a requirement like rows of evergreens when they already have trees there, they're gonna have to pull out existing, pretty new trees or mess up basically the aesthetic of what the original landscaping plan was. So, like I said, it's not a bare site. It has a lot of landscape plantings for an industrial site. And I really just meant to bring up the landscaping to make sure that everything is in line with what we've basically set up for the ED zone.
Thank
Do you
you.
have any
I just wanted to be transparent with what everybody was talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Catherine, how do we handle that procedurally then?
I mean, we don't have a plan in front of us, but I think what we can hear from them is that they're requesting the waiver from, I think at a minimum, I think number
the,
3, which is at property boundaries, evergreen trees shall be planted 15-foot intervals, offset to obscure from upper floors of nearby buildings, shall supplement other landscaping, linear rows of evergreen trees shall be avoided. I think maybe the board should consider a waiver of that. And in that consideration, basically the reasoning being that they have landscaping already on site, pretty recent landscaping that's been added. And that with that waiver, you would say that we also basically need a landscape plan that confirms the other requirements of the ED zone that can be checked for reso compliance. But I don't think what they're asking is significant.
The waiver would be for the one element of that landscaping plan, the evergreens, you're saying, right?
Yep.
And the rest of it you would determine later, you and Mr. Simmons?
We're basically going to confirm compliance with them, yeah.
Okay, so the waiver is not for the whole concept?
Not for the
it's
whole
just for the
section.
evergreens.
Again, if their site was bare, I think it'd be a different conversation. I think we probably want to bring it up to the standards of the zone. Again, they did a pretty good job 2 years ago to landscape the site, to beautify the site. So I just from looking at aerials and from seeing what they have, I think they're in a pretty good, strong position that they meet most of the ordinance requirements.
And just one more comment. I wanted to go back to the impervious coverage question. I just wanted to make sure the board is aware that nearly every site in this development was given a variance for up to 50% of impervious coverage. And that is because the everything goes to one single detention pond in the back of the site beyond that cul-de-sac. And that was designed, not by us, but designed and approved by the town to withhold the 50% impervious for the entire subdivision. I just want to put that on the record so the board is aware of that too.
Just one correction on that, if I may. It was designed by Alan Campbell, PE of Robert Campbell Associates, and the town reviewed it.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't think of the engineer who did it. Sorry about that.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions relative to the testimony we just heard, the supplemental testimony? Okay, so again, let's open up to the public. If anyone's here that has any questions or comments relative to this application? Okay, so seeing no one, I guess we bring it back. So Tom, if you could help us craft this, and Catherine, Dave, if you could give Tom any, make sure he's got all your concerns addressed as well.
So the board could consider a motion to approve the amended preliminary and final site plan as discussed this evening with the standard conditions, with the understanding and effectiveness of the approval this evening, provide the applicant complies with all requirements for compliance. They'll also the applicant will submit a revised landscaping plan updated to reflect the existing conditions and to demonstrate compliance with the ordinance, except that ordinances including the 2022 revisions, except that the waiver is granted from the requirements of the ordinance, the updated ordinance, to provide a staggered row of evergreens because the applicant has already planted the areas and we do not require the applicant to remove existing plantings. Those plans, the landscape plan will be subject to the review and approval of the board engineer. They will
submit a revised a tenant sign for the facade with the maximum size of 2 feet by 12 feet as allowed in the ordinance, with the details of the sign configuration to be subject to the review and approval of the minor site plan subcommittee. The lights, except minimal security lighting, shall be off between the hours of 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. And there'll be no truck idling and no parking of other companies' trucks on the property. The landlord will install a sign on the property of no truck idling or no idling. There will be, the tractor trailer deliveries will be conducted during regular business hours. And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman. We have, of course, the standard conditions include the review reports of the board engineer and the board planner. Is there?
Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Celeste. Anybody like to second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, so with that, Dory, can I have a roll call, please?
Deputy Mayor Dean Blumetti,
Yes.
Jeanette Burke,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Bill Enright.
Yes.
Joan Furman,
Yes.
Justin Canellis.
Yes.
Celeste Luciano.
Yes.
Ernie Ragsdad,
Yes.
Chairman Ronde.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Good luck.
Thank you.
very much.
you.
Appreciate it. Have a
Have a
good
good
evening.
night.
Okay, that brings us now to the third and final application tonight, which is 24-721, Brandstone of New Jersey, Inc. And folks, please come forward. Welcome.
Like playing with one of my pen caps like this. And like what we weren't up on a dais, we were like, for some reason, on the conference room because it was boating or something. That's what I was- and it, like, and like this, and it shoots off, and the podium is right in the middle, and so it shoots off, and it's kind of standing there. He doesn't notice it. He's like, I'm like seeing like Final Destination.
Thanks.
Inches away from slipping on the.
Hello.
Like, it's 100%.
Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. Daniel Benkendorf from Askin and Hooker, representing the applicant this evening, Brandstone NJ Inc. Here on their behalf is Juan Palacio. Juan, if you would, please stand and be sworn in.
Juan, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, and please state your name, spell your last name, and give us a business address, at least.
Juan Palacio, Palacio. Business address 26 Gale Court, Sparta, New Jersey.
And you're an agent of Brandstone, of NJ Inc.?
Yes.
Is that correct? All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, we're here to discuss a fully developed 5-unit building. It's located at 26 Gale Court. Specifically, we're referencing Unit A. It's Block 12008, Lot 11. It's a half-acre lot in the ED zone. Currently, SCARC occupies 3 of the 5 units, and a daycare occupies 1 of the units. Specifically with reference to the unit that we're discussing today, 1,200 square feet of it is office space and 3,000 square feet of it is industrial space. This evening, we're here to amend a site plan application for Unit A for a change in tenancy from a vinyl printing facility to porcelain fabrication, which is what the applicant does. To be clear, the applicant has 4 employees, only needs 4 parking spots. There is no client interaction on the site. If there is a dumpster needed, it will be maintained in the unit and not outside of the unit. There's no sign that's going to be placed on the building or in the sign that exists there now, so he's not asking for any changes or anything with respect to that. And there were some questions regarding a firewall from Mr. Simmons, some parking questions from Mr. Simmons. And I will be honest with you, this specific building is managed by an association. The association is made up of the unit owners. I have been in contact with SCARC's chief executive officer, and she has made it clear that the previous owner of the building was essentially the chairman of the association. And he was very lax in his job. And the last unit that he owned was the unit that my client purchased. And since then, no one has really taken any steps to reassociate the association. So what's going to happen is, after hearing testimony tonight, and it's clear, you guys want this to be taken care of. You want this property probably cleaned up after seeing it. So I can't make any promises for the association, and I also can't provide any testimony with respect to the current occupants of those units. The only thing I have for you is a letter from SCARC, and I haven't even gotten in touch with the people from the daycare yet. They haven't called me back. Additionally, the previous owner is non-existent now, so I have not been able to get in touch with him either. So with that said, Juan, you've heard my summarization of your application this evening. Do you accept that as your testimony this evening?
Yes.
And so if there are any specific questions with respect to the business that my client has at the site, we'll take those questions now. We can go over exactly what type of business he's operating on site. But again, I can't make any promises for the association because they're just not here. And we're going to have to meet and discuss.
Well, so Mr. Beckendorf, if I could, so we just got handed this letter. So I guess, I don't know if, Tom, this needs to be logged in as an exhibit, and also, I think, at least me personally, I'd like to take a few minutes just to read through it
Absolutely.
before we go any further, so I understand what it says.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Good? Everybody good?
Everybody need a little more time?
I just want to
Good.
state for the record, A1 is the September 3rd, 2024 correspondence from Ms. McMillan, the Chief Executive Officer of SCARC. There's a A2, that is a September 4th, 2024, a Google image of the property as it currently looks. And A3, September 4th, 2024, there's an image of, it's actually the amended site plan from March 16th, 2005. It was last revised March 21st, 2006. If you saw an original site plan of the property, you would notice that those parking spaces in the back of the property didn't exist until this amended site plan. But I wanted to make sure that you saw how those parking spaces came into existence. So it's easier to see it rather than just read it in the resolution. So I thought that'd make it easier for you.
So you mentioned, so we have A1, you mentioned an A2 and A3. Do we have those? Or,
You have all of them, yes. They were just submitted this evening.
I just handed you all three,
oh,
everybody.
all three. Okay, gotcha, okay.
And so,
So A1, A2, A3 were the letter
Yep.
from Scott. A2 was the aerial photo or the Google Maps photo. And A3 was the prior amended site plan.
Okay, everybody good?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And if you're to look at A2, which is the Google photo, the unit that the tenant occupies is all the way to the left of the building. And there is a large garage door that exists on the back side of that building. And the applicant will occupy those first 4 parking spots in the parking area there. That's all he actually needs. There's no client interaction on site. So I think what I'd like to do now is just get some testimony from my client about exactly what porcelain fabrication is, how it works. Juan, take the microphone. Juan, you will be fabricating porcelain what on site?
They are porcelain countertops and also porcelain panels for like bathroom walls.
And how do you fabricate them?
It's just some light cutting and then they get put on the truck and taken to the job site.
And how do you cut porcelain lightly?
There's a bridge saw for the 1/2 inch, and then for the 1/4 inch, it's a rail saw, but we also use the bridge saw.
All right. And when you're cutting with either one of those saws, do you use water?
Yes.
Okay. And when you use water in those saws, what happens to the water after it's used to cut the porcelain?
It just goes into like a drainage system, into a dehydrator, and it sends the clean water back into the machine. And then the dehydrator compacts it like a small block, which then gets dumped into the garbage.
It essentially collects the porcelain sediment in bags? Is that?
Yes.
And then those bags are just disposed of as you dispose of a sandwich that you didn't finish for lunch?
Yes, typically. Basically, there's the dumpster that's specific to it. Then we will get the dumpster, put it inside of the actual facility, and then that's where we dispose of it.
And so none of the porcelain leaves the saw area?
No.
Okay. And if it does, what do you do with it?
It's just cleaned up.
With a broom, dustpan?
Yeah, you could just, it's very minimal, the amount that comes off of it.
A vacuum?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And if you're running low on water in the saw, do you put more water in the saw?
Yes, but typically the saw just kind of runs in about 30 seconds and then it just stops because that's about what it takes from side to side for the saw to come through. So the water, once you start the saw, turns it on, water activates automatically, then it shuts off and then water shuts off.
All right. And is that fed by a faucet from the facility? Will there be a water line run? How does that work?
Just the water line run.
And that's really the only change that you really need to make to the facility. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions regarding that?
Yes, I just want to make sure I understand. Juan, you said that it goes to a drainage system. That's really not a good phrase if it's enclosed. I just want to make sure you don't that water that is used in the cutting
does not go to the septic system, does it?
No, it does not.
It doesn't go to the bathroom. It doesn't go to any drain to the septic.
No, it just recirculates.
It recirculates, and then it gets reused.
Yes, the clean
and-
water just gets reused.
And when and the solids that are cut and set and fall out or screened out, that's what you dispose of as ordinary waste? Is that what you're saying? Or
Yes,
it's-
so typically the way we do it, like currently, usually they'll have like a dumpster that's just for like, let's say a solid waste. But then I'll just find a dumpster that just does solid waste. But typically now we're at my current location, we just dump it in the regular dumpster because it just compacts into a bag.
And it's not in any way a hazardous material.
No, it's not.
And there are no petroleum solvents used in the cutting.
No,
There's no non-water solvents. So you don't add anything to the water.
no, it's just water, just to, like a dust control, basically. The water is dust control.
Okay, and you understand that there can be no use of hazardous materials in your shop. You understand that?
Yes,
And you understand that there can be no disposal of hazardous materials into the septic system.
yes, I understand.
And you also understand that there be no disposal of any liquid or hazardous materials onto the ground or outside the property.
That is correct. Nothing goes on there.
Okay. And this is very important because you're actually relatively close to the township wells that are used for water supply for 20,000 people. So be very careful about that. So that's one of the requirements of why you're here too, is to let you know that that ordinance applies to all users in the ED zone, not just you, but no one is allowed to be disposing of hazardous materials. So thank you, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
And again, as I stated earlier, I mean, if the board did look kindly upon the application this evening, it would definitely be conditioned upon and subject to a maintenance plan agreement and a landscape plan, because I believe the property does need some work. But there are things on the property that we couldn't explain, so I was concerned that we might get questions this evening that specifically relate to the site that my client just doesn't have the information for right now.
Okay, Dan, well, I guess what you're trying to say is that, and I think it's clear, according to this letter, I take it that Brandstone is already the owner of one of the condominium units in this building. Is that correct? And so there are 4 other condominium units,
So
or?
there's 5 units total, but there's only going to be 3 tenants. One tenant is Scark, they have 3 units. One tenant is the daycare, they have 1 unit, and my client has the final 5th unit.
Okay, but are the other, does Skark own the 3 units?
Yes, they do.
And the daycare facility owns one of the units?
I can't tell you that.
Okay.
And, yep, I can't
Okay,
say that.
and what, is there anything that your client, that Brandstone is buying or is owning as its interest that requires the clearing up of the parking spaces that have the dumpsters on them? Are you responsible in any way for those dumpsters that are in the parking lot?
Based on my conversation with Ms. McMillan, the Blue Ridge, Blue Diamond dumpsters are theirs. There's also a waste management dumpster, that's the daycare's. And my client would need to get his own dumpster. She also referenced that the dumpsters can be moved to the dumpster enclosure area if required. But again, I don't want to make any promises about that because I think I need to speak with her about that. Similar to the previous application, it was actually the property owner that came and made the application for the tenants. I think we need them to be here, or I need more of an understanding of how the building itself operates, and nobody could provide that for me.
Looking at the picture, is there a dumpster enclosure area?
It's the remnants of a dumpster enclosure area, to say the least. It clearly has a pad. It clearly has a back wall and maybe half of a side wall. But Blue Diamond didn't like the dumpsters in the dumpster enclosure because the trucks that they use, the height at which the handles go down, it was off by like a foot. So they would have to like angle them in order to hook the dumpsters. So they moved them down themselves. But this is the type of thing I just can't answer for you. My client doesn't intend on using any of those dumpsters. They're going to keep the dumpsters in the building, in their unit, out of the public eye.
Okay. All right, well, let's finish up your testimony and any questions from the public. Thanks.
Are there any questions from the board for my client regarding the porcelain fabrication
Mrs. Simmons, why don't,
or his operations?
Mr. Simmons, why don't we start with you, please?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Just referring to my report I did dated August 5th, 2024. It's an existing site. I'll just highlight some of the things just for the record on page 4, item number 4, B and C. I noted on the day of my inspection, there were several dumpsters located in the rear area of the existing building. They were not in the screened dumpster pad area in the rear of the building, as the applicant's attorney mentioned already. My recollection, I'd have to double check it, but I think the existing enclosure is only large enough for one dumpster. There were several dumpsters there. So the screening of the dumpsters is an issue. And then I noted item 4C, stop signs must be replaced in the two locations where the access drives intersect with Gale Court. They were on the original site plan and they weren't present when I got there and did my inspection. Again, when we talked about the parking, the applicant indicates there, at least I thought there were 3 employees, but I understand tonight there's 4. Okay. Data to be provided to show the total number of parking spaces and how many are available for this unit after the parking requirements for the other existing tenants are satisfied. When I did my inspection, the front parking lot was fairly full. And as Mr. Bengendorf and I discussed earlier on this application, I believe SCARC may park some vans there. So I think that has to be squared away as far as who's who, if you will, in the parking areas. There's no new impervious coverage being proposed, so there's no change in the storm drainage. I do note that the applicant should indicate the hours of lighting on the site, and again, that may be a matter of touching base with the other tenants to make sure everybody's covered for safety, so everybody knows what's going on. With regards to utilities, again, they're connected to the township's water system, but as far as the size of the existing service line and who's in there right now, that should really be verified with the utility department from the township just to make sure they're satisfied. And by the same token, the capacity of the existing septic system with regards to the tenants that are in there now. They have not proposed any new landscaping at the site. I don't know how it does or does not comply with the latest ordinance, so that would have to be checked. Architectural plans of the existing building weren't necessarily provided. There was a schematic layout the applicant provided showing what he's proposing to do. I don't know, is the applicant proposing any facade sign or just a panel on the existing freestanding sign?
No signs, just on the actual door, nothing on the freestanding sign.
No, not on the freestanding sign either?
No,
No signage at all?
no signage at all. I don't take any walk-in customers or anything like that. I just fabricate and install.
Okay. And on item number 13, on item number 13, we did talk about the polishing and the machinery that he's using and how it's basically a closed system. So that doesn't go into the septic system or cause any problems. And, those are my main comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Smart?
I think Dave took most of the comments I was going to have. And additionally, I think some of the other questions that I asked have been indicated by counsel for the applicant that they just don't have that because of the condominiumization of the building. So I think there probably are some unanswered questions that we just might not get answers to from the applicant. That's all I have.
Okay. Justin, why don't we start at your end tonight?
Sure. I'm definitely a little concerned with, the dumpsters, and I also see some pallets and stuff, and looking at Google Earth, kind of in the back parking area, and some of the parking lots, but I'm not sure that's your guys' issue. But the other question I had was, with the other units being kind of like day habilitation programs, and preschoolers, is the noise from the saw or any of that stuff going to be an issue with those types of people? Are they aware that that is going to be?
The noise is, there's not a lot of noise. Like I said, it goes into like 30-second intervals. And it's just like it's a motor. It's a 20 horsepower motor. It turns on, turns off, and then that's it. Then you just have the air compressors, which are like literally the polishing machines, and they're on for just a little bit. So we've never had any.
Are they like loud? Can you hear them from the other side of the building?
You
or-
can't really hear any of that stuff. From what I've seen with the actual building, we always keep our doors closed and everything happens right in there. There's no doors open, there's nothing happening outside.
Okay. All right. That's all for me.
I have the same concern with the dumpsters, but I mean, there's nothing that you guys can do about it. As far as the landscaping plan, I know the other SCARC facilities that they run have some pretty good landscaping, so hopefully you can come the association come together with some kind of a good landscaping plan and clean up the property. So I think that would be great. Thank you.
Same concerns about noise next to the preschool, if the preschool in fact is still there, because you're not really sure who all the tenants are. You know that SCARC has
I saw
3
kids
units,
there
but,
today. So I think the preschool's still operating, but it operates on the far end.
oh, okay, so it's,
SCARC is essentially next to the tenant, or my applicant. And then at the other side of the building is where the preschool is located. So I don't think the preschool would be affected by any noise. Just as a comment.
okay. And just the whole area just looks like disheveled. Really needs to,
No disagreement here.
it's kind of a,
Yeah.
kind of a mess. And yeah, the noise and just the general lack of a park-like environment, which is what I believe the ED zone was originally imaged to be, is deteriorated.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Palacio, thanks for expressing interest in doing business in Sparta. Certainly appreciate that. Just a couple questions about your operation. So the loading and unloading of the countertops or the cabinet walls, how does that take place?
So we have a forklift, and you just unload the sheet, bring it into the shop. So the pickup truck, Ford F-250, 8-footer, just backs in. We unload the slabs, we put them on the rack, and that's it. But we don't use, it's like a as per go. So I work for Porcelanosa, and the product's called X-Stone. So basically they just happen sheets, and they send me customers from their showrooms, and I just quote out the project, and then it typically takes a while for the project to get approved, and it's typically 2-3 sheets, and then basically I go pick them up at their distribution, and I bring them to the job site, unload. I bring them to my warehouse, and I just unload it, and that's it.
Where does the unloading and loading take place in terms of the parking lot?
It could be inside. It doesn't necessarily have to be outside.
Well,
Because
you're backing up a
forklift
truck
just-
to somewhere, right? Are you backing up a truck somewhere?
Yeah, so it would be,
You can't see it on the overview, but there is a very, very large garage door on the back of the building. And the applicant would absolutely be willing to back the truck into the garage door and do the unloading and loading from inside the building.
No forklifts in the parking lot?
No.
Kids backing up into trucks and?
No, there's plenty of room. It's a very large unit, 3,000 square feet. It's big.
Got it. I understand the water saws are used for like dust mitigation. Is there any concerns about when you're cutting porcelain and the dust in the air at all?
Not really. It cuts it with the water.
Right.
So basically, if the machine stops, it'll just stop. The blade stops, so it doesn't cut. So if the water is not getting fed in, the machine turns off
Got it.
because it needs the actual water.
So no
Do you
silica.
wear a
in the-
mask or anything when you're operating the machinery?
Yes, just a regular N95.
And that porcelain, when it's, can you explain how it's when it's dehydrated and it's contained in a bag and then disposed of? Can you just run through that process again?
Yes, so basically the water turns into like the mud. So it's water mixed with the actual, what the porcelain gives off, which is very minimal. It hits the ground, right? And then it just goes into a little like bin with a pump. And that pump sucks up that like mud water. And then it sends it through like a filtering system of like 3 bags. So all of the actual dust gets thrown into the actual bags. And then the clean water goes right back to the machine. And then the bags start to fill up. So it's kind of like separating water from, so it becomes like a solid mass inside of the bag. And then the bags get taken off and just dumped.
I believe there might have been a picture with the application too, showing the bags and the process. If not, one can be provided.
And it's just standard operating procedure to just dispose of that in the regular garbage.
Yes, typically at this moment, we just dump it in the regular garbage. It's not, we've never had an issue with the garbage disposal company about them saying you can't.
Thank you.
Thanks. Where's my sketch? Yeah. I think I recently sent that. I think I was already- Yeah.
I know I have it, I just gotta find it. Oh, I'll keep looking.
Okay. Can you, want to go back to the question around unloading and loading, and you mentioned, I guess I'm curious about the circulation within the parking lot, especially with different businesses, different people coming and going, perhaps vans, perhaps handicapped people, kids. So you mentioned about the rear of the building having a garage, but your unit would be in the very front of the building, closest to Gale Court. So how would the unloaded material or material to be loaded get from your unit all the way to the far end of the building?
I think they mean a different rear and front.
So, yeah, so this is, if you're coming off of Wilson Drive onto Gale Court, he would enter, any of his 4 employees would enter the second parking, or the second driveway, park here, and the truck would back directly into the building. And they would unload and load in the building.
When you say the front, when you were talking about the front and rear as
Okay.
it relates to this,
Yeah, there's a front entrance, but there would be no parking up there. He wouldn't even be using the front entrance.
Okay.
It would be locked.
front, by looking
Front-
at it.
oh,
You're
sorry.
really looking at it from Gale Court, the way you were talking about front and rear was the right side of the building is the front and the left side of the building is the rear. And you were also
I apologize.
trying to make a point.
Okay.
that- that this unit is closer to Gale Court than any of the other units, right? That's the
Yes.
basic concept?
Yes.
Okay. I think we get it.
Okay. And so the truck can actually enter the building? Okay,
Yes.
and be covered in the building, so the circulation would still be intact, right?
Yes.
If there's an emergency at the same time, the truck's going to be out of the way?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
In fact, arguably, this is required by the ordinance because you're not allowed to have outdoor operations. You can't can't be doing forklifting and things in the parking lot. You're supposed to load your trucks at the loading dock or inside the building. Okay. And it sounds, what you're proposing is complying with that ordinance requirement.
Yes. Okay. So I have 5 questions, concerns, and they've been addressed or discussed and brought up already. I don't know that we're going to get the resolution tonight, though, so I don't know. In a few minutes, I'd like to know how we're going to get somewhere definitive tonight, if we are, because it's the dumpsters and the screening, a lot of things that need the owner, right, or you need more information to provide answers. Landscaping, dumpsters, parking spaces, so you know the total, but what's the breakdown of the businesses that are there, how many are they using, and what's left for you to use? The lighting and landscaping. Well, we talked about landscaping. So there's really 4. So those are priorities, concerns. I don't know if you have answers tonight, if we're going to have to come back with future answers.
We're gonna have to come back.
Yeah.
I understand your prerogative. You guys are, very thorough, and I want to make sure that we get that information. And I just can't provide,
Yeah.
I can't say my client's going to pay for the landscaping.
Right,
'cause
right.
It's a big lot, so,
yeah.
just, I want to, and I did speak with the CEO, and she did explain that she wants to all meet. Not just that, but I think there might be some opportunity here with the original owner pay for some of this. So I want to talk to them and all together and see what we can do, because I think that there's a lot of things that need to happen here.
Okay. Okay, with that being said, I have no new questions then.
I was just curious, we're talking about this condo association, when it became, is it incorporated, or, are there provisions for what it is supposed to do? President and roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, I can't answer any of that because I just don't have that information yet. And that's why I really did try to communicate with these people. And Miss McMillan was awesome, but she's a very busy woman. So it was just hard to get her on the phone to talk to her about all of these things.
But if it's incorporated, wouldn't it be filed with the state?
I don't know that it's incorporated. I don't think that's how it's set up. I don't think that's how it's, I think it's just essentially an association. And each one of the association members is a unit owner. A condo
So it's not
owner.
a true
Yeah.
association?
No.
Okay.
No. Not like a lake association might be a nonprofit or something like that. No.
Okay. Another question Miss McMillan raised was that she didn't want anything in the back that would maybe interfere with the larger buses and vans that she has for the children. What are the size of your trucks that are going to be parking there? Are they going to fit in regular spots? Will they be larger?
Yes, they're basically, if you guys know what a pickup truck is. So it's an 8-foot bed, and it's a standard 250. It's not like a dually where it's like 2 tires. It's just like a little bit bigger than a passenger car. So basically, it's probably the same size as her vans, probably slightly smaller, and that's never outside. That's either out on the job site, and the only reason it would be coming into the warehouse is just to load and then to leave, or to unload any material we picked up, and then that just goes into the warehouse, and then it just leaves right back.
All right, but your delivery, when you have the delivery trucks, they're going to be the size of a
It's just
pickup
one truck. It's the same
Okay.
truck that actually picks up the materials, the same truck that's used to actually deliver the actual.
All right, I
finished
just
product.
wanted to clarify. Then I had one other question I wanted to pick up on what Mr. Enright was asking you about collecting all of this sediment, and they go into different bags. Now they get thrown in a garbage. The garbage company comes and takes them, puts them in a dump. The bag breaks, and now all of this is coming into the air, which is what you really wanted to prevent in the first place when you were doing the collection, or gets into the ground.
I don't know about where the recycling company or like I said, typically they have, so they'll either have like regular garbage, or they'll have like a specific, like let's say stone dust or porcelain residue, which is a separate type of, I guess, recycling system that they use. Because that's basically like when we had another shop where we were throwing out pieces of stone, pieces of porcelain. That was a completely separate type of dumpster. that the recycling company offers. So they would just pick up that type of dumpster, and then the regular garbage would be something else. But currently, the actual company that we use at my location, they don't require like, it could be dumped in the regular garbage. But if it's I'm willing to put the bags in the truck and then just take them to a recycling facility that accepts that type of dust. And they
I'd like
dispose of it
to make it a
accordingly how
condition,
they,
'cause
yeah.
It'll end up in the Sparta dump somewhere, and then we have the pollution that we're trying to prevent. And can the materials be recycled into porcelain again if you've broken them up into three separate bags?
So porcelain, I don't think porcelain is in any way, a hazardous material. It's a stone. It's just essentially like breaking a stone in your backyard, I think. I don't think it's made of any bad material. What is porcelain?
Basically, it's just
Clay.
like a ceramic. It's
Clay,
like a
I know, yeah. But you wear a mask for a reason. You don't want to be breathing this, and it just,
for safety reasons, you kind of have to actually.
I don't want to see it in the air. But can it be recycled somehow?
I think it could be.
Maybe you can make some money selling it back.
I know specifically that those certain dumpsters that they dump all the stone and all that stuff in, I think that they actually kind of recycle that. I don't know exactly for what it is that they recycle it for. It could be they break it down and use that as a flat base for something, or it could even be something called stone dust, which was used in landscaping where they're laying out concrete or putting down paver stones or stuff like that. Where it gets crushed and then basically
To kind of head that question,
stone dust.
yeah, I think what we can do is we can contact the companies, the waste management companies, and find out exactly what they would like us to do. And then when I come back, I will absolutely tell you exactly how they're going to dispose of it. If they have a separate dumpster, he's going to have a separate dumpster. If they don't mind it in their dumpster, then he's not going to actually get a separate dumpster. But I think we need to just talk to the waste management companies. But we weren't at that point yet. We just wanted to make sure that he could operate before we went through that whole process.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
I don't have anything.
I only have one concern, and that's predicated around the fact that we've got individuals with developmental disabilities that are potentially in and around the area. And I just want to ensure that what you're doing is going to be completely enclosed and that they're not going to have any potential access where there can be any potential accidents, because you are dealing with people who have developmental disability that, what kind of security do you have? How do you lock your doors? How do what kind of personnel? I mean, you're only talking about 4 employees. Can 4 employees manage that entire space and make sure that, 1 or 2 individuals don't accidentally make it into spaces where they shouldn't be?
Yes, so the district.
It was almost dead.
Oh, that's I.
Yeah.
Tom, would you mind?
Doesn't work.
We're ordering more, by the way.
So I'm in the business all the time. So I'm the owner, but I'm in the business all the time. I operate the machine. So basically I control my staff, and we always keep the doors closed. Even at our current location, we always keep our doors closed. We never, and like I said, there's no walk-in, so front door is always going to be closed. The back, it's a large bay door, and then there's a side door next to it, and those things are always going to be closed. From what I saw from Skark, the times that I've been there, most of the operation is through the front, and then they might have someone probably going out the back, but they are actually being escorted out and placed into one of their vans, and then they leave. But other than that, I haven't seen any type of activity in the backside where we are. Most of it happens in the front.
And by the front, we're talking about the first
Yes, you're
driveway.
talking about the, yes. the
Where
first
all the
driveway.
parking lot, where
Exactly.
most of the parking is.
That was it. That was my only concern. Thank you.
The only thing I'm just gonna maybe elaborate a little more. I think I fully understand the operation. It's almost a carbon copy of like a quartz or a granite countertop. You're getting a template, you're making your cuts, you're delivering it and installing it on a job site. Are you storing slabs in the facility?
No,
No.
no,
So
we don't. It's like I said, it's more of like
so it's not
a,
like if you go to, North Bergen and you have all the courts and
Yeah,
countertop,
that-
they have, hundreds of slabs
no,
on site.
no,
nothing
we're
like
not. That's like
You're
a
just
showroom
spot.
walk-in operation where they have a customer walk in and select your slab.
You're
We're not.
a
We're
little more
specifically
custom, more commercial?
based. Yeah, we're based off of like GCs,
Mm-hmm.
and most of my work, I was in that business mostly. The quartz and the granite and all of that.
Now
But
you're
that's
porcelain and,
that went out.
Okay.
It's too competitive.
Yeah.
So we're in the porcelain business, which is way more high end, probably 5 times as much money that it cost, and it's less material because they're only half inch,
Okay.
half inch and quarter inch. So you put 3 slabs of granite and
Yeah.
it's this big. I could do 20 in the same space,
Okay.
and that just gets picked up because that's through their orders. So I don't stock it to show it, basically.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
That's answers everything. Thank you.
I've, again, appreciate the information and the testimony. I've got 2 questions. I'm just trying to figure out how to wrestle with it a little bit. So when I look at the new aerial versus I'll call it the survey that was provided with the application, the survey showed 45 parking spaces, but I guess there's 52 parking spaces. So my question is, when you come back, can you provide the site plan or the resolution that approved those additional spaces?
That's exactly what I did this
That's
evening.
what this
That's why I brought it, because I had the same survey as you, and I was like, where are these spaces? Because Miss McMillan showed me where the spaces were. I was like, this survey doesn't show that. So we provided that this evening. This is the revised amended site plan, and it's dated,
And that's Exhibit A3?
yes, A3. Yep. That shows how they amended the parking lot to I think it equates to 52 parking spaces.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we can validate the approval of that and that kind of stuff, or there
Yeah,
was
so
testimony
we
that was?
submitted the resolution, but at that time,
Okay,
Dykstra Associates, it's always Jay's fault, did not provide us with the site plan for the resolution.
okay,
So we didn't have it at the time when we submitted our application.
okay. All right, thank you.
But I knew that was going to be a question because I too had that question.
Okay, thanks. So the second question is, and it may have been answered, and I apologize if I missed it. In terms of the amount of trucks that you expect to see per day when you look at deliveries, the product coming to and from, what would that be?
There is no delivery trucks. I pick up my own material, I bring it in, and it's not on everyday. It's not every day that we actually go pick up material. Typically 2-3 times a week we go for install. So we'll be like fabricating one day, and then 2 or 3 days we're gone. So I have contracts in PA basically, and most of the work is out in PA. So
So
we just
typically, it's one or 2 at most per day.
yeah, but it's
Not
leaves
even-
in the
not even
morning, comes back in the afternoon, and then whenever I have to pick up more material, I just go pick up material in Ramsey, and then I bring it back. It's very in-house.
Okay, great. That's all the questions I have. Dave?
I do have just 2 questions. While the applicant is discussing for the next meeting the logistics of the site, I'm just looking at the aerial photograph on A2.
Do you mind if we pass the microphone back, just in future?
I'm just looking at the aerial photograph in A2 and also the survey, and I just noticed that there is an existing on-site detention basin. And my concern is with the latest stormwater regulations and what have you, excuse me, that any kind of agreement that you develop between all the different unit owners include who's responsible for that maintenance and a regular maintenance plan. There may be one on file, I don't know, but I think that's an important aspect because if the DEP ever audited the township, I think it's important for us to make sure that that's on file and taken care of. And the second question I just had was with the cutting, do you just cut specific sizes or do you chamfer edges or do any other kind of finishing work or polishing on the,
So it's basically a cut and a polish. So
no chamfering or mitering of the edges or anything?
yeah, you miter it, but the machine goes on a 45-degree angle and cuts it. So it's the same thing as making a straight cut, same thing. You cut at miter.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, anybody else have any last minute questions? All right, so I guess at this point, we're going to need to set a date to go forward and to have you guys come back and provide testimony. Any date that you'd like to recommend?
The sooner the better. I've already talked to Ms. McMillan, and we're going to try to schedule a meeting within the next 2 weeks. So maybe the first meeting in October would be appropriate.
That
Right,
would be
that
the
sounds-
2nd, October 2nd.
October 2nd. So let's plan for October 2nd. If I can't get everybody together and in agreement by that date, then I'll let Dory know.
Thank you, Dan. And Dan, would you confirm that you extend the time frame for action until October 3rd,
Yes, please.
2024? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you.
All right, let me just run through this real quick. Agenda.
So this case carried to October 2nd, 2024 at 7 PM at this meeting room.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to other board business. Does anybody have any other board business that you'd like to bring up? And I'll just throw it out there. Okay, I do have two things that I'd like to just bring up. One thing, Tom, this is, I guess maybe Tom and Dory, if I can get your thoughts on this. It seems more and more we're getting a lot of last-minute data at these hearings. Some of it's significant, some not. How, is there a way to say that if you want us to consider something, you really have to have it to us by a certain point of time? Or is that just not?
Because
No?
these are responses to your review reports.
Mhm.
You actually want to get data
I agree with that.
record as opposed to old data. So generally speaking, it is very, very common to have exhibits come in the hearing, like tonight. So there's one exception, and that's when someone is actually seeking approval of a totally revised plan, that those should be in 10 days before. The other thing that they try to do is we try to say to people, if you're submitting something, try to get it in 21 days before so that Catherine and Dave can review it. But you're under a time clock where you have to decide application. These particular cases, these minor site plans are 45 days from the date they're deemed complete. So it's important to move them along. And that's why you receive data the same night.
So I get that.
And what you do is you have to ask
Support that.
questions of the applicant to cull out the answers.
But, we've had a couple cases recently where we've had actually updated site plans. And they'll put a poster up there
Yeah.
that we can't see. And they don't bring enough copies for everybody, but yet we're approving it. We've got to find a way to.
They should bring more copies, and, we got to get to the point where you're more digitized. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to review it before they come to the meeting to the greatest extent possible. Otherwise, like the letter tonight, that was easy, that was an easy thing to do because they brought copies. But again, when site plan drawings, where fonts are like this big from up here,
Yeah, you should get a
we're
copy.
being asked to approve it, but we can't really see it. And I just have a concern there. Maybe think about it. And
My
if we see
comment,
it,
I
we'll-
can't, I wouldn't say wait.
Yeah.
I would say, don't bother.
Don't bother. Just that
But
we
hear
gotta
the
accept what we
testimony.
got.
No, hear the testimony. See, you can say, I'm not going to take it, but then you're going to hear testimony about it.
Right.
So you're better off getting the detail in writing and getting plans that show what you have asked for. Because that's what's happening is people are complying with your review reports.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. That's actually better than the alternative, which is, I'm not going to do it.
So it sounds like the answer is there's really nothing we can do.
There's not that much you can do. I mean, if you really need to get more time to review it, you can just ask for, like, something like this tonight to carry it.
Okay,
But that backs up your schedule, too.
yeah, which we don't want to do.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. All right, so the other issue that I wanted to bring up, not issue, but just, when you go back to the beginning of the year, we had the minor site plan subcommittee had been reviewing the PDRM 2 zone.
For the ordinance subcommittee.
Thank you, the ordinance. And we were getting ready to bring forward some recommendations, and we just never, we just got overcome with events. So I want to get that back on track. I can tell you the two things that we're looking to do, and Catherine, I'll see if there's help on this one. It was, when you look at what was done under ordinance 22-21, the building max size was limited to 175,000 square feet. We never did that in PDRM 2. There was a lot of discussions with other factors, could we or could we not? But I think that was the recommendation of the subcommittee, was to, let's get that on the books for PDRM 2 if we could, as well as when you look at 22-21, there are some required impact statements that aren't there for PDRM 2. They're there for PDRM 1 and for the economic development zone. So all we're trying to do is make the three zones consistent. And I think that was the intent behind the master plan and everything else, that they're very similar. So don't want to do anything here tonight other than to introduce the discussion, and I'd like to maybe get something on our agenda to bring this forward and bring it to a conclusion one way or the other. So, and Catherine, we're probably going to look to you probably there in terms of what needs to get written up and how we present it. So any thoughts?
Put me on the spot here, Ron. I'm joking. So if I recall correctly, because when we did 2201 for the ED zone and the PDRM 1, the PDRM 2 zone is significantly different in how it reads and its requirements, which is partially why it wasn't included under that umbrella. There's various set-asides it has, there's various roadway requirements, there's various percentages as far as building coverage that limit it in different ways. So it was a separate can of worms, let's say. With, I think, a lot more restrictions than the other two zones, which is why we didn't touch it. Despite some of the future unknowns about the master plan, I think that is probably something that would work perfectly under the master plan to get it done. Now, if there's an immediate concern or immediate need to want to change that zoning ordinance to bring it to conformance, I'd say then let's put our efforts and resources towards that. But as long as we're working towards the master plan and a land use element of that master plan, I think that's probably a good place to do a lot of these things all at once.
So a little different view here. And I agree, when you look at what the subcommittee has spoke about, and you were in those meetings, we met several times and we had all these different ideas. And I think when you looked at all the ideas, we said, you know what, most of these ideas are good for that, let the master plan address them. But there was always a concern of the building size that says, that's something we probably want to address as soon as we can. So we don't end up with, the question was, how big of a building can you have there? And I think, there were some thoughts it could be as big as 300,000 square feet. So, how do we make that consistent with the other zones nearby, just from a building size? And the impact statements, that's probably a simple thing. It's the traffic, it's the environmental, and it's the community. I don't think that's a big ask. And I think those two things, when you look at the size and the impact statements, to me, that's the kind of things we should be addressing as part of the planning board ordinance reviews, as opposed to waiting for the master plan subcommittee.
Understood. So two things. Some of the other, when we kind of revamped those requirements for impact statements, a lot of them got captured into the general ordinance as well. So the EIS already exists, and we kind of ramped it up a little bit. But we relied a lot upon what already exists because the EIS requirements are pretty substantial already in the ordinance. But that's for every major site plan, any major that's not just the ED zone or the PDRM1 zone. So I just want to clarify that. As far as, I think, traffic, which was one of the traffic impact statements and the specifics related to that, particularly for warehouse use, to basically prove that it's a warehouse and not a different kind of use, and preparing that traffic impact statement, that's particular basically to warehousing use, which would probably be helpful, I guess, for the PDRM2 zone, I'm sorry. PDRM2, I think we have to look at it. I mean, the standards in that zone are so significantly written differently than any other zone, in that there's 55% open space set aside requirements, 3% impervious total on the tract, so 3% including roadways, parking, building, all would be included under impervious. Up to 5% if they have if they go for an incentive, basically they dedicate a lot of their tract to open space that's dedicated to the township, if the township accepts it. So 5%, let's say it's maxed out at that, is far lower. Now, I get the tract sizes are very big in the PDRM2 zone, but 5% is far, far lower than any other building or impervious coverage in any other zone. In relative to the ED zone and the PDRM1 zone, I'm just going off my memory, that's closer to 40%, 5% versus 40%. And the PDRM1 and ED zones still have very large tracts as well. So the only reason I mean to say that maybe there was a reason why we didn't include it before, simply because it was a can of worms that was separate, but also we felt that upon kind of looking it over in that subcommittee, that it had enough protections within itself, that it had contemplated a lot of open space dedication, it had contemplated very, very low impervious coverage, and other things. That's just the surface of what the PDRM2 zone includes. And so I'm not saying I'm against the idea, I just simply think that we should relook at what exactly the PDRM zone has as far as what it needs to line up with the ED. Because I don't think it needs the same full Monty that we did with the ED zone and the PDRM zone.
And I'm not suggesting that.
No, I just want to make that clear, that I don't think it's gonna take
But
that.
let me be clear, that's not what I'm suggesting.
Okay. And I think it might be a lot simpler, but we need to kind of understand where the holes are in the PDRM2 zone, because it is so different. So it would take a little bit of kind of getting up to speed with that first. So all I mean to say is probably the professionals to guide that, and then come to basically, whether it be this board or a subcommittee of this board, then basically say, like, let's address those concerns with X, Y, and Z in a draft ordinance, and then basically move forward in that way.
So everything you say, I thought we had done as part of the subcommittee discussions. And really what stopped the discussions was budget, right? We said we're going to bring it back to the planning board and do more here. So, the recommendation of the subcommittee, and I thought you were in line with it back in those days, was, we looked at the different sizes. So 175,000 square feet was a good number based on what exists today, based on the other max buildings around it and the other zones around it. And that was the recommendation that came out of it. So
I apologize. I haven't been part of this in a long time, so my memory is completely failing me on this.
So can we do this? Can you take some time, go back and look? And I'd like to continue the discussion at the next meeting, because I think for the next meeting, we only have one application as of right now, which is we're going to have the Ramirez come back. So I think that would be a good opportunity to let's have the discussion again. Let's bring it out. And the goal is, and I understand everything you said, is there's a lot of, it's not the same, because there's a lot of open space things, there's all kinds of different factors that come into it. But the bottom line is, when you go back to the Highlands Council recommendations, go back to the state recommendations, we thought 175 was the right number that they all supported. So we kind of landed on 175, given all these things, when they're all considered, no building should be bigger than 175,000 square feet. And that was the takeaway as I understood it.
Yes, and that was for those zones at that time. What I
No,
would.
this is just for PDRM2.
And PDRM2 in addition.
Okay.
What I would say at this point in time is that is something that's going to be re-examined as part of the master plan also. So all of those decisions that were made even a year ago, I think are going to be reanalyzed as part of the master plan. So not only just the PDRM2 zone, but all of the zones will be looked at, and all of the guidance and all of the Highlands information, all the state Office of Planning Advocacy information, all the warehouse siting documentation, that's all going to be accounted for in this kind of review. And so why I kind of say let's utilize the master plan is because I think there's going to be sweeping changes or sweeping recommendations about all of the zones based on a lot of that
I
information.
think that, may I just jump in for a minute? I think, Catherine, that what we want to weigh in is what are the disadvantages of waiting until the master plan? If we don't address this right now, could another application come in?
Yeah, and I absolutely think that that's something that can be done without jumping into the ordinance. Like I said before, let's check out where the holes are in that ordinance. Let's check out where any kind of vulnerabilities are in that ordinance, same way we did with ED and PDR in one zone, and then let's make a decision. Do you know?
And that was kind of where I was going, is can you go back, take a look at it? And, knowing that what the recommendation was, help us, is this a good recommendation, is it a bad recommendation? But what I don't want to do is not have a discussion.
Understood.
To me, it's important, the master plan is going to do some great things. It's probably a year off. I don't know that we want to wait a year to put this one protection in place.
Okay.
Because I think that's the last zone where there's a potential to have a bigger warehouse than what is recommended by the state and by the Highlands Council's warehouse recommendations.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
I would disagree. I think it's right now, the first step is, right, to identify how big's the gap, right? And how big of a lift is it to seal the holes if there's a gap right now? So I think it's just an assessment phase up front. And if we could do it quickly and doesn't cost a real lot, then it's ideal probably to do, we have to now instead of waiting the full year. Depends on what we find, though. I think it's just, going back, whether it was done last time, whether it's new work, I think just a little bit quick and dirty, see where we are.
Yep.
Okay, so can we, next meeting, you want a little bit more time? What's good for you?
When's the meeting after?
I think next one's the 18th, I think?
The 18th? That's
16?
probably okay.
Okay. And again, look, we don't have to close it there, but let's at least continue the discussion. Okay, thank you. Okay, then the last thing I have just in terms of other new business is just take a moment. I just want to thank and congratulate everybody that's here tonight because, we were faced with a tremendous backlog of applications. I think as of tonight, that backlog is gone. And that took a lot of work from a lot of people, extra meetings, especially from the people that sat in for both our special meetings and the Diamond Chip meeting. So congratulations, everybody, and I think we're back on track, and hopefully we can really start expediting some of these meetings and maybe, getting out of here by 10 o'clock. So good job, everybody. And that's all I have. Okay, so anybody else have anything? Otherwise, we'll go into updates. Okay, updates? Deputy Mayor Blumetti.
Sure. The town council update from the August 27th meeting. Again, we only had one meeting in August. Two items. One is ordinance 2412 passed, which creates a bond for partial funding of a new playground at Station Park. Some of you or many of you might have seen it written up in some of the local news. So this is associated with Jake's Law. So it's to create a fully ADA compliant, inclusive playground, and it's going to replace the one at Station Park. You'll see that the bond itself was about $700,000. However, around $500,000 of that is going to be covered by a grant. So the township will be paying for about $200,000 worth of the project. Secondly, Resolution 9-8 passed. After a lengthy discussion, it passed 3-2. And this was the resolution to replace the artificial turf softball field at Ungerman Park. So that did pass 3-2, and that's going to be moving forward. Our next meeting is next Tuesday, September 10th at 10 o'clock. 7 o'clock. Hope we're out by 10 o'clock. Exactly. That was it. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Dunbar?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have no report for the EC.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the master plan subcommittee meeting, so our last meeting was August 12th. We're scheduled to meet again next Monday on the 9th, where we're going to talk about, Catherine has done a great job with putting together a community hub website, and we're going to hopefully take a look at that and get that approved, as well as there's a survey that was attached to it, so we'll look forward to that meeting. And that's all I have on that. Minor site plan subcommittee?
Yeah, we met earlier tonight. We had one approval, and we were waiting to hear back on a handful of our other pending applications, and moving toward a final place for our minutes, which should be prepared in time for July and August by the time we meet on the 16th or 18th.
Bill, can I ask how many applications are we up to for the site plan waiver?
For the year,
Yeah.
37.
Thank you.
And that might not include any that come in the last 48 hours.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? If not, we can move on to resolutions. So, the resolutions, we did Lakeland Bank up front. Dory, I believe Behringer is being rescheduled for,
Yes, Behringer, we're going to carry until the 18th.
great, thank you. So that gets us to open to the public, and they're seeing that there is no public here. I think we can move to adjournment unless anybody has any other issues that you'd like to discuss or raise. So with that, could we have all in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
No.
Oh, this is a